They laughed when they saw our rifles. 15 minutes later, their commander's head rolled down the hill like a soccer ball. The alien war camp echoed with coarse laughter as one of the Zorak warriors hoisted a rusted bolt-action rifle, holding it like a novelty from a museum. Several others gathered around, their thick armor plates creaking with movement, amusement flashing in their mirrored visors. The rifle looked almost fragile in the Talon's massive claws. Its wooden stock was scratched, its barrel long and crude compared to their sleek energy rifles. Commander Trask, towering over the group, barked a laugh and raised his plasma halberd. He smacked the rifle clean out of the warrior's hand and into the dirt, where it landed with a puff of red dust. The gesture sent another wave of deep-throated alien laughter rippling through the squad. They had conquered 10 systems without resistance. Earth's outpost would be no different. They were wrong. Down the ridge, lying motionless beneath a jagged camouflage net woven from native flora, the sniper had already dialed in the wind. The heat shimmered faintly off the barrel of his rifle, but he didn't blink. The scope's reticle rested exactly at the narrow section of Trask's armor, just above the clavicle ridge where the energy shielding left a millisecond delay. He had been watching them for hours, tracking their posture, their breathing patterns, even the way their commander flicked his talon when giving orders. His finger didn't hesitate. The round fired with a deep, bone-cracking thump. A full second later, the commander's neck snapped sideways with unnatural force, and his head detached cleanly from the body. It didn't drop, it launched, tumbling end over end down the slope in full view of the entire squad. For a moment, there was silence. Then chaos. The Talons scrambled into defensive positions, barking in their guttural war tongue, sensors lighting up in red as they scanned the surrounding trees. One soldier raised his repeater and blindly fired into the brush, plasma bolts tearing through the foliage. Another activated a drone, sending it upward to sweep the area with thermal scans. They were elite soldiers, trained for siege warfare and full planet suppression. But they weren't trained for ghosts. Back at the communications post, a younger Zorak, smaller and unadorned, watched from behind the supply crates, his blue-tinted eyes wide. Ensign Drac was a tech analyst, barely out of hatch training, and unlike his bloodthirsty comrades, he had read every Terran intelligence brief twice. Maybe 3 times. His claws trembled slightly as he pulled up an old data log from the Earth Invasion archive, cross-referencing the sniper's signature with incident reports. There was a match. A cold chill swept through him as the file loaded. Project Harpy. It wasn't a platoon. It wasn't even a team. It was one human. One man. Left behind after the formal withdrawal from the colony. No extraction protocol. No recorded name. The mission was listed as experimental psychological disruption, though the Terrans had simply written one word in the risk factor column: unacceptable. Drac tried to report to command, but no one was listening. Half of them were too busy chasing phantoms through the jungle or digging in behind makeshift barriers. Others had already scattered into the lower tree lanes, trying to flank the ghost they couldn't see. Another rifle cracked. Then another. This time it was 2 soldiers, both shot through the visor at a downward angle, clearly from above. The sniper had moved. That was impossible. The shots were less than 2 minutes apart, and at least 400 meters from each other. There was no way a human could move that fast across terrain like this. Unless he'd never moved. Unless he was already ahead of them. The alien squad began retreating up the hill, toward their dropship stationed at the peak. It was the logical move: establish height advantage, regroup, bring in orbital support. But logic had already failed them. The moment they crested the next ridge, a line of detonation charges erupted under their feet. Not enough to kill, but enough to shatter balance and break formations. They weren't just being killed. They were being humiliated. The sniper watched all of this from a distance, chewing slowly on a protein tab. He didn't speak, didn't mutter anything clever. He just adjusted the bolt, felt the familiar click, and took another breath. His rifle was an old human-made Barrett M82, a model centuries out of date by galactic standards. But in his hands, it was a war crime waiting to happen. He wore no uniform, just a shredded ghillie suit built from rags and stitched bark. His skin was tan, cracked, sun-scorched. His eyes had a permanent squint from years staring into sunlit scopes. His heartbeat never changed pace. Another shot rang out. The alien holding the drone controller collapsed backward, the device sparking and spinning uselessly into the dirt. It was the sixth confirmed kill, and the aliens still didn't know where he was. Or who he was. Or why every time they thought they'd mapped his position, another corpse proved them wrong. Drac finally broke protocol and radioed open frequency. His voice cracked as he spoke, first in Zoric, then in standard trade dialect. To the human sniper, this is not a formal engagement. We surrender this quadrant. There was no reply. Only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind and the distant call of some native bird. Then the crack of a branch snapping, much too close. Drac turned, expecting one of his fellow soldiers. But it was just the wind again. Or maybe not. On the ridge above, the sniper stood up for the first time in days. Just long enough to reposition. His legs ached, but he didn't let it show. He adjusted the sling, ducked low, and began moving through the brush, his footsteps silent, his presence erased with every step. He was done playing defense. The next phase was control. Not just of the terrain, but of their minds. The sun dipped lower over the ridge as a thick mist crept in from the jungle below, casting long, distorted shadows across the alien camp. Jarek, now the acting commander, stood at the edge of the ledge where Trask's body had fallen. He clenched his claws, the thick knuckles of his gauntlet tightening until the armor creaked. His species was built for domination, muscle, teeth, and weapons fused into a war-born frame, but none of that had prepared him for the invisible humiliation slithering through the trees. Trask's head had been found hours later, lodged in the roots of a mangled shrub. It was intact. The sniper had left it like a warning. Precision was one thing. Intention was another. Jarek snarled and barked orders in quick succession, deploying their aerial drones in a layered pattern over the canyon, while sending 2 squads into the jungle to comb the perimeter in concentric circles. He called it a net sweep, but the men already knew. It wasn't a strategy. It was desperation. Still, they obeyed. They were Talons, not cowards. But the tension was cracking beneath their armor. Every snap of a twig or rustle of a leaf sent trigger fingers twitching. They kept their eyes scanning wildly, muttering curses about human ghosts and backwater magic. One even carved a death rune into his thigh plating. None of them laughed anymore. Within an hour, the squad to the north triggered a proximity alarm. Not from a shot, just a motion signal. 3 soldiers closed in, scanners sweeping the underbrush. They found what looked like a camp. Old human gear, a few rations, a broken data pad, even a bloodied rag. But it was too clean. Too placed. Then the first soldier stepped forward, and the ground erupted beneath him. Not an explosion. A spike trap. Primitive, wooden, but coated in neurotoxin from the local flora. His armor slowed it, but the needle pierced under the joint at his ankle. He screamed as he collapsed, convulsing, mouth foaming. His teammates didn't have time to pull him back before the sniper fired again. 1 round. 1 kill. Through the shoulder plate of the soldier carrying the radio. Then silence. Jarek slammed his fist into the command table. His tech analyst, Drac, stood still, watching with unreadable eyes. Jarek finally turned toward him, growling low. He asked what Drac knew, truly knew, about this Project Harpy. Drac hesitated. Then he pulled up the report, translated it aloud, and described the sniper's confirmed history. Dozens of hits across 3 colonies. Each time, after humans withdrew, the sniper was left behind with one goal: control psychological space. No backup. No tech upgrades. Just a rifle, local supplies, and years of training in stealth, patience, and psychological warfare. Not a killer by emotion, but by design. According to the report, the operative had turned down medals and even refused extraction offers. He had gone dark years ago. Some believed he was dead. But Earth didn't recall him. because he still served. His file listed a simple call sign, used only once before encryption, hollow. Jarek spat on the ground. He didn't care what the humans called him. They'd burn the jungle to ash if that's what it took. He ordered the heavy dropship, overkill, but necessary, to begin low-altitude bombing of the valley. The massive bird-like craft roared to life, descending through the cloud layers with its twin engines glowing red. Talons on the ground cheered. It was power incarnate, the ultimate answer to guerrilla tactics. It would cleanse the trees and silence the ghosts. It didn't even reach the treeline. Mid-descent, the sniper fired. Not at the cockpit. Not at the engines. But at the exhaust port between the stabilizer fins. One shot. And then the air around the dropship shimmered in blue flame. The left engine detonated midair. The right swung wildly, throwing the ship off balance as it spiraled like a wounded beast and slammed into the eastern cliff face. The explosion sent molten debris tumbling down the slope, scorching trees and burning several Talons alive. No one cheered anymore. For the first time, even Jarek felt it. Not fear, shame. Not because they were losing to superior firepower, but because they were losing to what they had mocked. A relic with a bolt-action rifle had brought their elite to its knees. He stepped back into the calm tent, his breathing shallow. Drac didn't say anything. He just stood there, arms crossed, eyes staring at the floor like he'd already accepted something the others refused to see. Meanwhile, the sniper moved like smoke between the foliage. His breathing was calm, his steps deliberate. Every branch he touched bent back silently. His rifle was slung now, and in his hands was something else, an old Terran Claymore mine. The aliens had tech to detect energy signatures, but not these old metallic nightmares. He planted two near a choke point on the western retreat path, where panic would likely funnel the survivors. He didn't enjoy this. He wasn't angry. His expression didn't change. His thoughts were still. He was simply finishing the mission. One shot at a time. Back at the alien camp, the night arrived heavy and slow. The remaining soldiers had stopped patrolling. They simply stayed close, rifles raised, scanning into darkness they couldn't pierce. Jarek sat in silence, visor off, claws resting on his knees. He asked Drac what humans called this kind of war. Drac hesitated. Then answered softly. They called it sniper chess. Jarek didn't understand the term. Drac explained, the humans believed warfare wasn't just a game of force, but a test of patience, control, and sacrifice. Every piece could be used. Even the pawns. But it was the sniper who became the queen in the end. Moving across terrain unseen, striking without warning, changing the board without mercy. Somewhere in the distance, another shot rang out. Then another. One soldier fell dead from his perch, another from inside the latrine tent. Two more disappeared during a supply run and were never found. It didn't matter if they retreated or attacked. He was always ahead of them. Jarek finally gave the order no Talon commander had ever spoken in recorded history. He ordered the camp lights shut off. If they couldn't see him, maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't see them. But the sniper didn't need their lights. He had theirs. Their heat, their shadows, their mistakes. And now they were all boxed in, hunted not by a ghost, but by a man who had no chain of command. Only a promise to keep. The fog thickened like a curtain drawn over the last act of a tragedy. The alien camp, once blaring with commands and lights and drone chatter, had gone still. Only faint movements remained now, shuffling, low murmurs, the occasional hiss of plasma rifles warming nervously in the cold air. The Talons, once a proud warrior caste, were no longer soldiers. They were prey huddled in a cage of their own making. Some had stopped speaking entirely. Others repeated survival protocols like mantras, though none of them helped. Each time a soldier tried to sneak off for recon, he vanished. No screams, no gunfire. Just silence, and then nothing. Jarek's own breathing felt too loud in his ears. He hadn't slept. His claws twitched involuntarily as he clutched his sidearm, not because he expected it to work, but because holding something gave the illusion of control. Drac was the only one who moved freely, though even he had changed. His movements were quieter now, his expression unreadable, his voice reduced to whispers. Jarek finally turned to him and asked what kind of creature the humans had bred to do this. Drac responded without hesitation. They hadn't bred him. They'd abandoned him. Left him to rot in the dirt with one weapon, one mission, and all the time in the world. That's what made him dangerous. Not the rifle. Not the stealth. It was time. The sniper had lived on this land longer than the trees. He knew it better than their maps. This wasn't a battlefield to him, it was home. As the sun rose over the ridge, the camp made one last desperate move. They rallied every remaining soldier, 21 in total, and pushed southwest through a narrow canyon, hoping to reach a beacon site for extraction. It was a calculated risk. They knew the sniper wouldn't expect mass movement. They also knew the canyon was too narrow for him to fire from range. What they didn't know was that he didn't need to. As the lead formation entered the gorge, a thunderclap echoed through the pass. The first man collapsed without even a sound. His neck was gone. The others ducked, scanning for the source, but the shot had come from above, at an angle no rifle should have reached. Then came the second hit, through the gut of their medic. The third through the ammo carrier's thigh, shattering bone and dropping him in a shriek. The squad scattered, some crawling along the canyon wall, others trying to climb to higher ground. That's when the traps went off. Thin wires strung between rocks caught boots and triggered mines hidden in natural crevices. Claymores detonated inward, sending shrapnel laced with alien bone fragments into the lungs of their own men. Within 5 minutes, the team was down to 10. Within 10 minutes, 5. Jarek himself dragged one of the wounded behind a boulder, trying to call for assistance. But all channels were jammed. He realized then what they'd refused to believe. The sniper wasn't just hunting them. He was isolating them. One by one. No survivors, no warnings. Every move they made was being answered before it began. Finally, Jarek made a decision. He would face the sniper himself. Not out of pride, but because there was no one else left to send. He left the wounded behind and moved into the trees with only his sidearm and his war blade. No armor. No drones. Just instincts. And rage. He stalked the tree line for hours, listening, watching, trying to find movement in the thick silence. At one point he found a shell casing perched on a stump, deliberately placed. A single .50 caliber round. Next to it, etched into the bark, were 5 alien names. Names of the fallen. Jarek's own was carved at the bottom. He spun wildly, weapon raised. Nothing. The forest stared back. Then a faint rustle to his left. He fired. The plasma bolt lit up the trees, scorching leaves and splitting bark. But no scream followed. He walked toward the impact and found only a tattered piece of human cloth hung on a branch. Another taunt. Another waste of time. He turned and froze. Standing 5 meters away, perfectly still, was the sniper. No scope. No rifle. Just him, half covered in mud and brush, cloak trailing in the wind. His face was obscured beneath the brim of a sun-bleached cap, and his arms hung at his side. Jarek didn't speak. He charged. The two clashed with brutal force, Jarek swinging the blade with years of battle behind every stroke. The sniper dodged, ducked, parried, never using more energy than needed. He didn't draw a weapon. Instead, he redirected momentum, using Jarek's own strength against him. At one point, Jarek managed to land a glancing cut along the sniper's ribs, but the man didn't flinch. He stepped back, exhaled slowly, and then moved with sudden, controlled violence. 3 quick motions, an elbow to the jaw, a step behind the leg, and a twist. Jarek hit the ground flat on his back. The blade flew from his hand. He reached for his sidearm, but the sniper was already standing over him. The barrel of the ancient rifle hovered just above his chest. It clicked softly. Not in threat. In judgment. The sniper said nothing. Just looked down with eyes that had seen war without medals, victories without applause. Then he spoke, not loud, not angry, just final. This land watches. And its eyes don't blink. The shot didn't come. Instead, the sniper turned and walked away, vanishing into the trees like smoke in a windstorm. Jarek lay frozen, breathing hard, not sure if he'd been spared or sentenced. By the time a recovery drone arrived hours later, only 3 survivors remained. One was Drac. One was Jarek. The last was the sniper's message, carved into the roots of the ridge, in clean block letters, using both human and alien script. Primitive weapon. Surgical result. Earth didn't respond to the incident. No diplomatic protest. No military escalation. Just silence. As if to say, you stepped where you shouldn't. And now you know. Back on Earth, the sniper returned to the hills. Alone. Rifle slung, eyes forward, his mission complete. He never transmitted a report. Never returned to base. He simply faded back into the land that knew him, and that he knew in return. Because this war wasn't over territory or conquest. It was about warning the galaxy. Earth may be young. It may be backward. But it only takes one human. And one rifle.